My wife went to a wedding in the UK, and now she's leaving us for good. Turns out, she's been having an affair with an old friend and was secretly planning to move in with him. She admitted everything when I confronted her, and now we're divorcing. She's even giving up custody of our kids. Hi, I'm 47, have a fulfilling and comfortable life. I have a job I genuinely enjoy, live in a nice suburb, and am blessed with 3 wonderful children, M8, F6, F4, and a loving wife, Emily, 45. I've always believed that Emily and I were a perfect match, but a recent email has shaken that belief and left me questioning everything. Emily lived in the UK from 2010 to 2015 while pursuing her PhD. During that time, she built strong friendships and has made it a priority to visit every couple of years to maintain those connections. This past August, she traveled to the UK for 3 weeks to attend a close friend's wedding. After discussing it, we decided that I would stay home with the kids, as I couldn't take that much time off work, and the children likely wouldn't enjoy the event. Emily left, returned as planned, and life went on as usual, until last week. I received an email at my work address from a woman claiming to be the wife of Emily's friend, let's call him Jake, M44. In her message, she detailed her suspicions that Jake and Emily had an affair. She pointed out that Jake had picked Emily up from the airport, spent significant time at her hotel, and frequently went out to dinner with her alone. She even included photos, one of a pair of earrings she claimed to have found in Jake's pockets while doing laundry and another of a lipstick stain on his shirt. The lipstick shade was one I immediately recognized as something Emily often wears. There were other details she provided, but for the sake of brevity, I won't list them all here. This was a lot to process, and at first, I thought it had to be some kind of joke. I tried to brush it off, but the thought kept lingering in my mind. Before her trip, Emily frequently spoke with all her friends in the UK. Maybe it's just the email influencing my memory, but I recall her talking to Jake more than the others. On top of that, I know she never really liked Jake's wife, though I'm not sure why. I've never invaded Emily's privacy by checking her phone or social media before, but now I feel an overwhelming temptation to do so. However, I also know I'd feel guilty if I looked and found nothing. Plus, if she senses my suspicion, wouldn't she just delete anything incriminating? I'm completely unsure about how to handle this situation and would really appreciate any advice. Right now, the only approach I can think of is confronting her about the email and immediately asking to see her phone before she has a chance to delete anything. But part of me worries this would upset her and, even if she agrees, I might not find anything at all. Whip day if I asked my wife to show me her phone after receiving an email accusing her of cheating. Also, I forgot to mention, Emily no longer has those earrings. She wasn't wearing them when she came back, and when I asked about them, she said she lost them. Update. A few hours after I made my first post, I confronted Emily, and she confirmed my worst fears. She admitted she's in love with Jake and can't continue living a lie. She still says she loves me and the kids, but she can't stay with us anymore. According to her, she was just waiting for a better time to tell us, but apparently, this affair has been ongoing since March, with Jake flying in occasionally to meet her secretly. We're getting a divorce, and Emily is moving to the UK soon. She confirmed that, in addition to attending the wedding, she also had a job interview in August and is set to start around the new year. She has already applied for a British visa and plans to live with Jake once she moves. As for custody, Emily is voluntarily giving up full custody. She doesn't want to disrupt the kids' lives, so they'll stay here in Canada with me. While part of me appreciates that decision, I'm also shocked at how easily she's walking away. She wants to pay child support, but I prefer raising the children without her financial involvement. Still, the court will probably require her to pay support, regardless of my feelings. Emily is also seeking structured visitation, which, given the circumstances, will likely be granted. From what I understand, the court tends to favor arrangements that allow both parents to maintain relationships with their children, even when one parent is moving to a different country. The lawyers are still ironing out the details, but it looks like she'll have visitation during school breaks and holidays, with possible virtual calls in between. I've been trying to keep things as amicable as possible, and the more cooperative I am, the more Emily seems to agree with my terms. We're also talking about what to do with our house. Emily wants to sell it and split the proceeds. While I'm hesitant to let go of the family home, I likely don't have much choice since it was purchased during our marriage. For now, our lawyers are still working through everything, and no final decisions have been made. Given the circumstances, it may take a while before we reach a resolution. In the meantime, I've been advised not to make any significant financial decisions. As much as I want to stay here with the kids, selling the house seems inevitable. Currently, Emily is staying in an Airbnb, and Jake has flown here to be with her. They plan to travel to the UK soon. My lawyer tells me that adultery isn't grounds for special treatment when it comes to custody or property division. Therefore, it won't influence how assets are divided unless marital funds are directly involved. Emily likely used money from her personal account. Unless it can be proven she used our joint finances to fund the affair, it's unlikely this will make any difference in court. I've been in regular contact with Jake's soon-to-be ex-wife, Eleanor, mostly through email, and recently, we've had a few phone conversations. Eleanor apologized, feeling guilty for revealing the affair, and worried that if she hadn't, my marriage might have been saved. I assured her that, given the severity of the situation, divorce felt unavoidable, and I preferred not to stay in the dark about such a significant issue. She even sent me some messages and evidence of their relationship, but since Emily is openly admitting to the affair, it's not relevant legally. Eleanor has shared a lot about Jake. Apparently, this is the third time he's cheated on her, and she's done with him. She says there's no chance of reconciliation, and Jake doesn't seem interested in trying. She also mentioned that Jake has no desire to raise children who aren't his biological ones, which explains why Emily isn't fighting for custody. Eleanor's divorce is likely to be much longer and more complicated than mine, since both she and Jake are fighting for full custody of their children and can't agree on many issues. I haven't had much time to process everything. The past 2 weeks have felt like a blur. But one thing I know for sure is that I no longer have any feelings left for Emily. It's not just about the affair, it's how easily she's walking away from our children. I never imagined I could hate someone I once loved so deeply, and it's a strange feeling. The hardest part is the children. My 2 youngest daughters have started asking why their mother isn't around as much, and it's been incredibly tough to explain the situation to them. My eldest seems to understand a little more, which has made him quieter and more withdrawn. I'm lucky to have a family that's been incredibly supportive. My children have received several heartfelt letters from cousins, which I read to them every night. All my siblings have sent gifts for the kids, and one of my brothers, along with his wife, visited over the weekend. My sister-in-law even made a lot of food, some of which is still in the freezer, and they kept the kids entertained while I met with my lawyer. My other siblings have also offered to help with the kids whenever I need it. Beyond that, my parents have been calling daily to check in on us, and my 78-year-old mother has already made plans to stay with us for 2 weeks in November to help around the house. The collective effort of my family has made this experience much more bearable, and I'm deeply grateful for all their support. To everyone who encouraged me to speak with Emily after my last post, I'm grateful. I was tempted to ignore Eleanor's message, but it kept gnawing at me. Your advice gave me the courage to act. Emily has shown herself to be a liar, and I have no doubt that her idea of a better time was simply when it would cause the least inconvenience for her and Jake. Update. Consider this more of a venting session than an update now that I've had more time to reflect on everything. I'm aware that Emily often traveled back and forth to the UK during our marriage. She insists her affair with Jake only began in March 2024, but I'm convinced she's lying. It's almost certain that this has been going on for years. Given how much she had already prepared by the time I confronted her, it's clear to me, and to others, that she had been planning this for quite a while. In fact, within a few days of our confrontation, she already had some legal documents ready. Moreover, Jake showing up in Canada right after our conversation made it obvious that they had planned for her to tell me around this time. It makes sense that Emily was well prepared, just waiting for the right moment to execute her plans. She had already applied for her visa, secured a job, secretly appraised our family car, which was under her name, and sent personal items with Jake during his secret visits to the UK, all while I was completely unaware. I feel like I'm only beginning to uncover the extent of what's been going on, and I doubt Emily would ever reveal the full scope. On top of all this, she had been in touch with her lawyer long before I confronted her. With all of this in mind, It's hard not to wonder if she secured her job earlier than she let on, perhaps to make her actions seem less deliberate. Two of Emily's friends have reached out to express their shock and disappointment in her behavior. One of them, Janet, mentioned that another friend had told her Emily was consulting her divorce lawyer as early as late August or early September, and that this friend also confirmed my suspicion that Emily had been sending some of her belongings to the UK during Jake's visits. I'd been losing sleep, replaying the last few months in my mind, maybe driving myself a bit crazy, but there are a few things that stand out. For example, when Emily went to the UK in August for the wedding, she was carrying 3 heavy suitcases. She told me they were full of gifts for her friends, and I didn't think twice about it, though it did seem a little excessive. When I picked her up from the airport after her trip, I noticed the bags were surprisingly light. I now suspect that, in addition to attending the job interview she mentioned, she used the trip to take a bunch of her personal items to the UK. This would explain why, since her return, she's been wearing a much smaller selection of clothes. Despite this, I was somehow blindsided, and I completely blame myself. Looking back, I can see there were signs I ignored, and I guess I didn't think Emily was capable of this sort of thing. A part of me wonders if this outcome could have been avoided entirely had I been more assertive and vigilant in the past. The worst part of all is that my children are now dealing with the consequences of my ignorance and stupidity. While I twiddled my thumbs, my wife had essentially started a new life. Most people in my life are now aware of my separation from Emily. I've stopped wearing my wedding ring, and I've explained the situation to friends and coworkers who noticed its absence. One close friend, along with many others who reached out privately on Reddit, suggested I get DNA tests for the kids due to Emily's travel habits and history of dishonesty. While I understand their concerns, I want to make it clear that this is something I will never do. I would never question my children's paternity, and nothing will change that. Life without Emily has been challenging. Mornings have become a whirlwind. Between getting the kids ready and getting myself out the door, I'm barely making it to work on time half the week. The added parenting responsibilities are exhausting, and it's difficult to keep up. Our home has a large driveway, so I'm already dreading the task of shoveling it when the snow starts falling. The kids are struggling too. They aren't fans of the meals I prepare most days, and they hate how busy I've become. It's incredibly frustrating to know that, while we're here struggling, Emily is on a relaxing vacation in Europe with Jake. Our communication has decreased, and I recently learned about these developments. I'm unsure whether she plans to return to Canada after her vacation or settle directly into what seems like a very comfortable life in the UK. On a brighter note, I managed to get the kids to see their doctor. She provided useful resources and advice, stressing that time and clear communication were key to their adjustment. While I'm hopeful, I won't lie, I'm still worried. It's early, I know, but they are still very upset about the situation and act out frequently because of it. It's clear they're struggling to adjust to our new reality. Through it all, my family has been incredibly supportive. My mom arrived as planned last week, and things have already gotten much easier. The kids love her cooking and spending time with her, and her presence has given me some relief, allowing me to take care of other tasks. Whenever the divorce is finalized, I plan to designate my eldest brother and sister-in-law as legal guardians for the children. They live relatively nearby and have already agreed to take on that role if needed, which brings me some peace of mind. However, I highly doubt this will be any time soon given my much busier schedule and Emily dragging her feet before traveling. The whole process has slowed to a snail's pace. One of the hardest aspects of all this has been making decisions about our family home. After considerable thought and speaking it over many times with my family, I'm leaning towards selling at this stage. Emily has already offered me a bit more than half of the proceeds since she sold our SUV right before leaving the country. My lawyer has noted that selling the SUV before we finalized anything was premature on her part, considering I contributed significantly, 40%, to the purchase. He thinks I have strong grounds to seek reimbursement elsewhere in our asset division, which aligns with Emily offering more of the house. Getting more than half seems fair, given that I contributed about 65 to 70% of the down payment and monthly mortgage payments. As mentioned earlier, the family SUV was solely registered in Emily's name, but I contributed about 40% of its cost, so it's frustrating that she sold it without consulting me. Over the past few weeks, I've realized my sedan is too cramped for the kids and impractical for my mother, especially when she needs to get in and out for errands. Therefore, I'll need to trade it for something larger. In exchange, Emily has generously agreed that I can keep the furniture and appliances, though I suppose that's the least she could do. While part of me would like to stay in our current home, it's probably better for us to move. I hope that relocating might help us avoid further interference from Emily, though realistically, she's likely to interfere no matter where we are. I've been considering townhouses closer to my workplace, which would shorten my commute and place us near a good school. However, my sisters pointed out that moving the kids now would mean changing schools and separating them from their friends, adding another big adjustment for them. An alternative would be to move to a smaller, more manageable house near our current one. This would reduce my workload and allow the kids to stay in the same school. Regardless of what we choose, the idea of a new home without the memories of Emily is appealing. The location of our current home is another reminder of how short-sighted I've been. It was much more convenient for Emily's commute than mine. For a time, it worked because the children's school was close to her work, which allowed her to be available for them during the day if needed. But now, with my workplace farther away, this setup is no longer useful. I haven't heard from Emily's family, and frankly, I'm not interested in reaching out. Regarding Emily's future with Jake, I don't wish for their relationship to fail, as the more stable her life is, the less likely she'll interfere with mine. However, I do take comfort in knowing she's unaware of Jake's history of infidelity. I don't feel morally obligated to warn her about his character, and Eleanor feels the same way. I've been checking in on Eleanor regularly since she doesn't have the same family support I do. Her immediate family is enamored by Jake's wealth and believes she should do whatever it takes to keep him, even though it's clear that neither he nor Eleanor wants to reconcile. Hello. I wanted to take a moment to address some of the things that have come up in my personal messages. I appreciate everyone's concern, and I'm using this opportunity to clarify a few points. First, I'm still adjusting. I've come to terms with the situation, although I occasionally feel bitter about it. Some days are better than others, but I'm managing. Overall, things don't feel as overwhelming as they did at first. The kids are still adjusting as well. They're tough, but it's been a lot for them. I'm thinking about enrolling them in a program for children of divorced parents, but I just need to find the time to look into it more when my work settles down. There seems to be some confusion about household dynamics. Some people have suggested that Emily was overburdened with chores, implying that it justified her decisions. To set the record straight, before things fell apart, the division of household chores was about 60-40, with her taking on the larger portion. On the other hand, I covered about 75% of the living expenses, while she covered around 25%. Additionally, Emily took far more solo vacations than I did, and, well, we all know how those went. And yes, I know how to cook. I've always been health conscious, so the kids typically preferred Emily's meals. Despite what some messages might suggest, I still have no intention of DNA testing my children. Emily has settled into an apartment owned by Jake. I'm not sure if I've mentioned this before, but Jake owns a place in the city to avoid commuting during the week. According to Eleanor, he used to stay there during the week and return to his house on weekends to be with her and their children. After his most recent affair was uncovered, he's been staying there full-time and only goes back to his house to see his kids. Eleanor also shared that this apartment is the same one where Jake had his previous affairs, which seems fitting, I guess. In other news, I've finally replaced my sedan with a larger car. I probably spent more than I should have, but it's been one of the few things that's brought me some joy lately. Lastly, I've received a lot of messages suggesting that I have some moral obligation to warn Emily about Jake's past infidelity and the possibility that he might cheat on her. I don't feel that it's my responsibility. Maybe Emily already knows and just doesn't care. Update. I wanted to give a quick update since many have been asking how the children and I are doing. Apologies for not doing this sooner, but my current schedule leaves me with very little free time. Things have gotten a bit better. Life is a little easier now that I've hired a nanny to assist with the house and the kids. With her handling a significant portion of the chores each week, I've been able to focus more on work. I enjoy my job, but recently I've had to work longer hours to keep up with our finances. Between legal fees, the nanny's salary, and the car I may have overspent on, my expenses are adding up quickly. Longer work hours mean less time with the kids, but I try to remind myself that it's only temporary. I make an effort to spend time with them on the weekends when I'm not working, though even that has been tough. They're adjusting, but I know it'll be a long while before things start feeling even remotely normal, if they ever do. I'm still figuring out our long-term living situation. The house will most likely be sold, and I want to find a place for myself and the kids that doesn't remind me of Emily. Lately, I've been talking to Eleanor less and less. Some of it is due to my busy schedule, but mostly, I just don't see the point anymore. Speaking to her just reminds me of how good things were before. The main reason, though, is that Eleanor has decided to stay with Jake. She says he respects her, somehow, and has shown commitment to their family, despite still being with Emily. According to her, he's shown this commitment by prioritizing their children over his new relationship and giving her space. It's jarring, especially when just a few months ago, she was determined to go through with the divorce, and now she's completely changed her mind. But I guess I shouldn't be too surprised. She's admitted this isn't Jake's first affair, and she's always forgiven him in the past. Emily is still living in an apartment that Jake owns, while Eleanor and their children are staying in the family home. Jake splits his time between the two places, staying at the apartment during the week and returning to the family home on weekends and occasional weeknights. At least Eleanor has made it clear that Emily isn't welcome in their home, and Jake seems to respect that. Emily rarely calls the kids during the week, and when she does, the conversations are short and she tends to whisper a lot. Since these calls happen late in her time zone, I assume she doesn't want to disturb Jake's sleep. However, on weekends, when Jake is with his family, Emily makes more of an effort to call the children. These calls aren't long either, as I've felt they shouldn't interrupt the time I've planned with the kids. This situation is still very much a work in progress, and I hope it gets easier with time. While a part of me is still shocked by how everything turned out, I think I've mostly come to terms with this new reality.